Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. This is Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America, and I'm thrilled and delighted to be here today with Dr. Zach Bush from Restore. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you for having us again.
Oh, I'm so excited to see you again. It was wonderful to see you at the Natural Products Expo West. Your booth was crowded. You're getting a great response from Restore, and we are too. We've been selling your product on our website as a fundraiser. We thank you so much for your support.
We love what Moms Across America is doing across the board, but we're excited that you guys are getting the word out on this science. So thank you for your partnership.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It really is an honor. We're thrilled. We have enough problems, and there are a lot of problems right now, right? Glyphosate there's widespread contamination of glyphosate, and it's in our food, our breast milk, our water, our urine. We've recently learned in our wine, our beer, and our breakfast foods as well, including organic. So it's so distressing that it's very, very difficult to avoid.
Yeah, even in the clothes we're wearing now, it's everywhere. And
the cotton products, the feminine cotton products that we use, or even the gauze that's used in hospitals, it's been found. It's in the rain.
75% of rainfall on the earth now. Yeah.
Oh, it's so distressing. But we are very excited that you have done research to show that Restore can support the ability for the body's cells to resist the harm from glyphosate. Is that how you would phrase it?
Yeah, I think that in some ways it can be phrased as an antidote type effect to this ubiquitous toxin that's in our environment, but also it's more fundamental. It's really getting at what is cellular health, and cellular health is uninhibited access to information. If the cell always has information and enough of it, it never dies. It can repair itself ad nauseum. If it loses in an information stream, then it becomes vulnerable. And that's why we see this epidemic of chronic disease in America right now. It's not just because one toxin's out there. It's because the whole body has lost this communication network that was previously made by this huge ecosystem of bacteria that thrived in our soils and in our guts and on our bodies. And now, after 40, 50 years of antibiotic use, and interestingly, glyphosate, as you probably know, is patented as an antibiotic, not a weed killer. And so it's maybe the most ubiquitous antibiotic on earth. And so we're killing bacteria across the spectrum through all sorts of mechanisms. And with that loss of communication, we develop damage and disease.
Yeah, well, we are here today to talk about that damage, disease, and questions that people have about using Restore. And I'm going to get straight to those questions because people want to protect themselves. We want to be able to do something to protect themselves from the toxins in the environment from all different areas. And if there's something that we can do to prevent the harm from the toxins in the food, we want to take those steps. And we've had people ask questions about many of these toxins. And the first question is, does Restore protect against other pesticides besides glyphosate?
That's a great question. There's so many mechanisms of herbicides and pesticides that are out on the market. We've really focused on glyphosate. We have not done clinical studies or basic science studies with other of the common ones. And the main reason for that is one of usage. Currently, twice as many pounds of glyphosate are used worldwide than any other weed killer on the market. So by just sheer volume, it's our biggest problem. And so when you have a public health crisis like we have, I think that we're really funneling limited resources towards those main primary problems. But there is an enormous amount of data. For example, in the Roundup product, there's other ingredients in there that have herbicide, pesticide qualities to it. So it's not just the glyphosate. But one of the reasons, again, to focus on glyphosate really has to do with the weed killers coming off patent. So in 2007, Roundup came off patent and went generic. And so the vast majority of the product being made worldwide is being made from China and other sources that are making cheap generics of glyphosate, and they don't necessarily have all the other components that your Roundup product has. But it is a little bit startling seeing the science behind glyphosate and then realizing that when those tight junctions open up and you become a leaky sieve, it's welcoming in every other toxin in the product that you may be looking at. Or if you look at EPA statistics right now at the number of pounds of herbicides being used in the U.S. Like I said, twice as much glyphosate as any other, but then the next one down, you're still looking at almost 150 million pounds being used in the soil. So toxin after toxin after toxin, and those are just the ones being added as herbicides and pesticides. You can also then obviously look at the ones that are in the linings of our cans that we pack our food in, the plastics, all of those things add to it. Then you can add to that the pharmaceuticals, and so it goes on and on. And once that leaky sieve is there, and we think that glyphosate is probably public enemy number one in regard to the leaky part, then everything becomes a much bigger problem.
Yeah, so that's a really important point to understand, because people have asked, have you tested the stomach cells for Roundup, all of the chemicals involved, or just glyphosate? And it sounds like you've just tested for glyphosate, correct?
Just glyphosate, yeah.
Right. And that alone, I find accurate and important in making a decision about using your product, because of what you said, that glyphosate can make the impact of the other toxins, it can increase the impact of the other toxins, right?
There you go.
Yes.
Exactly right. Yeah, once you've lost that intelligent barrier system, then everything in the body can become much more vulnerable.
Right. And we know that these other toxins are 1,000 times more toxic due to Seralini's study, his recent study. And even if we didn't have that study, as a normal person that understands science, when you add one chemical to another chemical, something different happens. And I, as a mother, don't want to guess about what that other something different that is happening, right, in exposure to my child. So even if we didn't have any other scientific studies, I think a reasonable common sense person would understand that once you have all these other toxic chemicals involved in the body, that would probably not be a good thing. So
right, there's synergy, there's toxic synergy, and where we have demonstrated that in great detail, and it's actually our first peer-reviewed journal article coming out. It should be coming out in the American College of Integrative Medicine, ACIM. Their journal article should publish in June, and it's showing the synergy between glyphosate and gluten, the gluten breakdown product, gliadin, on the intestinal wall. And so that first peer-reviewed journal article is really showcasing that A, we've got the expertise to publish in this area, and B, to start to really tease out the mechanisms by which glyphosate and gluten are interacting to give this synergistic effect. So you can take just gluten and it gives some tight junction toxicity, or you can take just glyphosate and gives tight junction toxicity. If you put the two together, it's not additive, it's multiplying. So you have a synergistic, logarithmic kind of effect when you add the two toxins. So you can start to imagine if you take the glyphosate and some gluten, both of those are now mixed in your typical wheat product. And so you've got both of those present, and then you add another 16 toxins from a true Roundup exposure, you're starting to really mount a lot of synergistic potential and toxicity.
Yeah, and synergistic potential means chemicals changing in unknown ways and impacting our organs, our bodies in ways that we simply just don't know about right now.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
making changes in the chemicals. Okay.
And right now, unfortunately, because of the legislative environment we have, the burden is on us as consumers to figure out that stuff. And that's what Moms Across America has been so amazing at, as you've created a consumer group that's raising the money to do the studies, the glyphosate study and the breast milk, everything else you guys are working on. Phenomenal work by consumers. And it's frustrating that it's fallen to us, but on the other hand, maybe it's appropriate because it was our own kind of convenience living lifestyle that led to this situation where other people are growing our food. And so ultimately it is our responsibility as consumers to reclaim our food industry, if you will.
That's a great point.
We do that through growing tomatoes in our backyard. That's reclaiming food industry. We do it through demanding labeling, all these things. So in some ways, it's frustrating that the government agencies haven't stepped in. They certainly should have. There's been a lot of science on the table for a long time.
40 years ago, this work should have been done.
That you're setting in motion where the consumers no longer spending their time begging the EPA to do something, and they're simply doing it themselves. So you guys are showing a pathway for responsible consumer knowledge that's just exciting and really inspirational. So we appreciate what you're doing for sure.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of support. We're in contact with scientists and farmers and researchers every week, even on a daily basis. And we really appreciate the courage of those scientists that are speaking out, even the ones that are getting criticized, as we are as well for the work that we're doing. But we think it's more important to raise questions and to have people consider for themselves, and we definitely appreciate the ability to have solutions as well. So let's get back to the solutions. One of them, which we believe is restore and protecting the gut bacteria along with a good, healthy, organic diet. And some people are asking, what about the dosage? What's the best dosage to take? And does it interfere with your other meds?
We have no drug-drug interactions with this dietary supplement. The dietary supplement is unique in that it does not need to metabolize to liver pathways or kidney pathways. And so it's a metabolite of the bacteria. So these are tiny little molecules, these carbon molecules made by bacteria. We call them carbon snowflakes because each species makes their own variants. And so when you're drinking Restore, there's probably millions of variants, or at least 1 million variants of these carbon snowflakes. And all of those guys are already in a metabolized state. And so they're active biologically as a redox molecule or reduction oxidation positive negative charge. So they're biologics. So they don't need to go passing through the liver and interfere with the metabolism of a drug or anything else. So there's no interactions with medications out there that we would be concerned about.
Okay, so if somebody's on cancer medication or diabetes medication, no problem to take this.
I've been using it in my clinic for 4 years. I've used it across the broadest spectrum of patients and their conditions. And I have never had an issue with any medication interactions. So it's just a really safe compound, and it's delightful to be able to use it in so many modes without concern of interruption of your pharmaceutical pathway. We also don't see it as a replacement for any pharmaceutical. So it's definitely a dietary supplement in the truest sense of the word. And so it's much like a vitamin B complex. You're not going to find a medication that a vitamin B complex is really going to upset. So similar to that concept where you've got a really unique pathway that is really independent of your pharmacy pathways.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Thank you. And we've had some questions about dosage. We had one woman who took maybe a tablespoon and it seemed to interact with her in not the greatest way. And then she went down to 1/8 of a teaspoon and she felt fabulous and has had great improvements. What can you tell us more about the dosage? Is it okay for babies, pregnant women? What type of dose would you suggest for certain types of people?
Absolutely. The shortest answer to this is to jump onto our website or Zen's website as well and look at the usage guidelines. So the usage guidelines is about a 4-page document that answers all those questions in pretty good detail from me. But to give you a short overview, we use this across all ages in my clinic. We certainly have pregnant women using it. Pregnancy is probably one of the most important times to have intact membranes. Starting at the gut barrier, but the blood vessels, the placenta, the blood-brain barrier, all these are critical barrier systems during infant development. So we think that that's probably one of the most important times to get the cell biology type effects that we see in the laboratory working for your patient population. So we use it certainly in pregnant women. We use it in infancy, a couple drops of the product onto the nipple right before breastfeeding. Your breastfeeding study that you guys did with Moms Across America really was an eye-opener and pretty terrifying results. And so with the knowledge that many of our babies are being exposed through the breast milk, we certainly don't want women to stop breastfeeding. We still think, despite the glyphosate present in the breast milk, it's critical to get the immune system and other microbiome benefits of that breast milk exposure. So a couple drops on the nipple, let the baby breastfeed. Every few hours you repeat. So a good effort there in that nursing state. Once the child goes into an eating state, very typical to just go ahead and go to anywhere from a 1/4 teaspoon to a teaspoon in that age, 6 months, 9 months when they start eating solid foods. By the time they're 2 years old, teaspoon a few times a day is typical. And that usage guideline that's on the bottle, we think really applies to 95% of the population. And so that teaspoon 3 times a day is probably your ideal usage in many, many situations. We do see sensitive individuals, and these sensitive individuals are addressed in the usage guidelines, again, on the website. But these patients are usually ones that have very poor bacterial biome. And so they have a lot of yeast overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, or they've been on long-term antibiotics and have really wiped out biome, or they're autistic or have some other very sensitive neurologic condition. these individuals can actually have more side effects in the first couple weeks with bloating, some constipation, things like this, because they've got a lot of distance to travel from messed up gut to healthy gut. So you may be having some die-off of overgrown species. You may be having proliferation of species that the patient's never had before. So big adjustments happening. And so the woman you mentioned who was having some symptoms on a tablespoon backs down to a quarter teaspoon, feels fantastic. We see that very frequently. And so if you know you have a very sensitive gut, you know your health has been challenged for many years, then we always recommend start low. And that can be as low as 3 to 5 drops under the tongue. Even at that level, we're seeing an effect in our autistic children and stuff like that. So start very slow.
And you're saying that's because there's so much pathogenic gut bacteria going on that introducing something which supports the beneficial gut bacteria slowly is going to cause an adjustment in the gut of the die-off of the pathogenic gut bacteria. Is that it's like there's going to be an adjustment of balance? Is that sort of what's happening? Is it sort of like on a seesaw you want to balance out rather than go woo like that?
Yeah. Yes. And it's certainly the bacterial environment as mentioned, but another important one to realize is hydration. And so when you have leaky gut and leaky membranes, you cannot hydrate the body effectively. And so your body makes all kinds of adaptive changes to manage that dehydrated state inside the cell. There's electrolyte shifts, proteins are produced inside the cell, all kinds of different things are done to try to draw water in when you're in a dehydrated state. If you suddenly fix the membranes, water gets sucked out of the colon really quick, and this is why a lot of people will find themselves relatively constipated in the first week or two on the product because they've been walking around dehydrated as a chip, and then they suddenly fix their colon, and now they've got a situation where they absorb every drop of water out of their bowel they can in the effort to rehydrate that body, leaving no water left in the colon, so they have relatively dry and slow transit stools. So in that situation, you just have to increase hydration. But the bloating, things like that, if you're having bloating, headache, that can be a hydration effect. It can also be a direct bacterial effect, as you mentioned as well.
Okay, wow, that's fascinating. So we have to think about holistically what's going on in our body. It's always a good idea to drink more water anyway, especially when you're going through gut changes, any kind of cleanse or introducing, good probiotics and things like that to the gut. It's always a good idea to drink more water. Awesome. Okay, so how long would you expect it would take to start seeing improvements for different types of issues going on with people?
Whole gamut here. There's no way to really predict. A rough rule of thumb is for every year you've had a symptom, you can count on about half a month of progress before you notice any change. So if you've had this for 20 years, you can count on this being 10 months worth of effort before you start to see a change. That's not just for Restore. That's just like any supplement or any intervention that I would make in clinic. That's a rough rule of thumb that I tell my patients. It's been 20 years, don't expect changes tomorrow. It's going to be some time. So that's a rough rule of thumb, but Restore is interesting. I mean, we've certainly never seen anything work this fast under a microscope. I mean, it's pretty stunning how fast we see tissue changes, tight junction changes, hydration state, all kinds of things shifting, including mitochondrial function, all of this within minutes of the first exposure. We even see stem cell activation within 2 hours. I mean, it just goes on and on, that within those first minutes and hours after use, you're seeing really dramatic changes. And so for some people, that will mean that even the very next day, they'll have a better sense of well-being, even if their issue XYZ that they're hoping gets better hasn't changed yet. They can see areas of clinical improvement very quickly, even if they aren't 100% back. And so even in a single individual, you'll see the whole gamut where some things even within days are improving and other things may take 10 months. If you're talking about antibody production, things where the immune system has been activated from leaky gut, you have an autoimmune condition. Now you're looking at probably years, not months, to get those antibody levels to start to drop.
Okay, so we need to have some patience with this, but it is definitely possible to see some changes within a few days. For some people, it might take a couple weeks or a couple months for other people. I've heard just the other day that a mom who has a child with a lot of different issues, after taking it, I think it was about for a week or two, she said, "Man, she's sleeping." I mean, that.
So common.
That can restore a marriage, not just the gut. I mean, people go crazy when their child is not sleeping and they snap and they're irritable and it could lead to divorce. I'm not kidding. It is like this could restore
There's no
some
question.
variety.
There's no question. Yeah, sleep is one of the most amazing ones. I just had a patient in clinic this week. She was born with severe cerebral palsy, major cognitive injury. She was in the NICU. She was, very complicated birth. She's very disabled, nonverbal, all of this stuff. And she, as part of that syndrome, has had profound, severe insomnia since birth, pretty much. Started Restore in December, and by January 15th, she was sleeping for the first time in her life. And you're exactly right that the biggest stressor that took off, she's 21 years old now, and she has never slept. And so you can imagine the mom of that child who hasn't slept in 21 years. And so for the whole family, it was such a massive transformation. And we often forget to put enough weight on these little minor things. And maybe she hasn't started talking yet, but my gosh, she's sleeping, and what a relief.
Yeah,
So you're right.
80% growing. 80% of your growing and healing happens while you're sleeping. So, the concern for the rest of the body holistically when somebody's not getting sleep, and of course, mental illness, which is another one I'd like to address. We've been hearing that this can impact brain fog and, mental health issues. How does it do that? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Restore doesn't treat a darn thing, which is so interesting. And it's my favorite thing about using the product and discovering the product is that it was a great excitement to think this doesn't fix any disease.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger question is there such a thing as a disease? There may not be a thing that we could even call a disease. If you have a disorder or something that could be called a disease, all you've described is a lack of normal health, which is cellular repair.
Right.
So in the end, Restore doesn't treat mental disorders, it doesn't treat depression, doesn't treat anything. But what we see is the body is inherently has all kinds of mechanisms for antidepressants, anti-anxiety, anti-insomnia, anti-inflammatories. All of these are inherent qualities of a healthy body. And so what Restore is doing is just giving back a foundation that allows the body to go back into play. Now, specific to the brain, my original...
And by go back into play, you mean for the body to function as the way it's normally intended to function, which is to protect itself, for it to heal itself.
Heal itself.
Right. So it's
heal itself, to protect itself, to do cell repair ad nauseum. If the cell gets so damaged it can't fix itself, it'll go into cell suicide and be replaced by a stem cell prodigy. So, it just goes one. It's beautiful. It's a system that is self-sustaining. Like Mother Earth, she's self-sustaining, and I really believe she is. I think that Mother Earth is looking at the human species being like, you guys are completely trashing me, completely trashing the planet, so I've got some checks and balances in place. You start killing me, your health's going to suffer. You're going to have infertility. You're going to have all kinds of things that are going to keep you from taking over the planet, and those checks and balances are there for good reason. And so it's intriguing to think that the body is a little microcosm of Mother Earth, and it has checks and balances there. And so when you give back those barriers and those foundations, oh my gosh, the potential for health, healing, sustainability is just profound. Yeah, the area of mental health specifically, and how does that tie into inflammation and all that? I have a couple lectures online that you can find probably about the mental health piece and major depression, seasonal affective disorder, and all of this. These are all conditions of the temporal lobe being under stress. And then once the temporal lobe goes through chronic inflammatory stress, areas of the temporal lobe shrink, and you develop anxiety disorders, usually insomnia, and then major depression a little later down the road. That would be a typical progression, but you can kind of see any combination thereof. But the interesting thing is that all ties back again to these original injuries in the tight junctions of the blood-brain barrier. And so autism, major depression, anxiety disorders, attention deficit disorder, Alzheimer's dementia, Parkinson's, all of these have commonality in their underlying injury to those barrier systems, accumulation of inflammation, inability to fold proteins correctly, inability to do normal neural signaling correctly, and all of these lead to dysfunction. And so there's almost innumerable number of dysfunctions that can happen in a system as complex as the brain and the peripheral nervous system. And so Restore, again, not fixing any disorder of the brain, simply giving back the foundations, barriers, protection mechanisms that are inherent in the cell, and then the body goes back to its normal state of self-sustaining and all of that. So we see it as a foundational piece for absolutely everything. You don't even have to be human. incredibly important for a plant. A plant being grown in soil right now is inherently under duress. Not enough bacteria in the soil. There's too many toxins in the soil. And if you put Restore on that seedling, you can't believe how fast the darn thing grows.
Really?
And so you can see it on seedlings. It's a good experiment to do with your kiddos. If you got kids at home, it's always fun to sprout some seeds. Just have them do a little controlled experiment where half the seeds get a couple drops of Restore every day, the other half get none. And watch the difference, and it's pretty stunning. Hydration of the plant happens much more effectively. The plant will hold on to water more effectively. It gets more nutrients from the soil. And then let the kid think about what that's doing in their body. They're just like an organic little seedling coming up from healthy soil. And if they got Restore in their gut, they've got more nutrients, they got better hydration, they've got all this inherent capacity for life. So a really cool controlled study you can do in your own home.
That's a great idea. I did that with my dog. She had a rash around her eyes, which I connect to the gut. I think it was, we had changed dog food from the bad stuff to the good stuff, and it was just something going on in her gut. And I gave it to her for 3 days, 1 teaspoon for 3 days in the water. And then I went and traveled for 5 days. And when I came back, the rash was completely gone. So,
the amazing thing about those animals is, and what we see in the animals is oftentimes once that, barrier's back up and running, they need very little of it. You could give it to them once a week and still maintain incredible protection in the animals. So really powerful in the animals. Animals heal faster than humans, I think, because they don't have all the emotional overlay that we put in the disease process.
They don't have a block. Is this going to work? Is it not? Is it going to conform?
That's right. Yeah.
They have all this stuff going on.
They didn't have to log on to 10 websites to decide if they were going to buy the product or not.
We're stressing ourselves out just by researching all these different things.
Absolutely. Yes, we have the new consumer syndrome of purchase anxiety.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's been lovely talking with you. Is there anything else that you want to say? One other thing is, when is the best time to take it?
Yeah, that's always a good question. And it mentions it on the bottle. You can take 1 tablespoon a day for general wellness, or you can, for better efficacy, split it up into 3 teaspoons before the meals. And so we think that before is helpful in the sense of the amount of energy you're going to spend, because we've done studies in the lab that show both protection and repair of the tight junctions. And in the lab, you can see the same result in the end. And so you could take it before the meal or after the meal and end up with the same result. But the amount of energy you're going to spend if you eat glyphosate or gluten or something and it does injury, and then you have to go repair it, you've just spent more energy than you would have if you had just prevented the injury in the first place. So the lab experiments would really suggest that before the meal is probably your best bet.
Okay, great. And to be clear for the people who are watching for the first time, you put Restore on, first of all, you put glyphosate on stomach lining cells. They broke apart. You put Restore on, they came back together. You put glyphosate back on again, and they did not break apart.
Correct.
So we're talking about putting that in your gut before you eat the offending food for you, and then it will support the stomach lining cells to stay together and to stay healthy and to continue continue supporting health in the body the way that
the only correction there is just it's actually small intestine and colon cells. So the stomach itself is actually a different cell population, but we've done small intestine and large intestine, the colon. Right. So, those are the place where we think leaky gut has the most effect. But we also have exciting product coming out, which is Restore Sinus Wash, which is really got exciting implications for all of the nasal congestion we're all walking around with and everything else. So you can use it many, many different ways, but oral is, I think, front line of defense. Many of the conditions, like you said with your dog with the eye rash, many of the visible conditions we see systemically all are going to tie back to small intestine injury. So doing it orally is going to go way beyond just treating the gut. Okay, great. So we are supportive of this type of product because it fulfills on our mission of creating healthy communities. When our communities are healthier, the entire nation is healthier. When we are thinking better, more clearly, when we don't have as many health issues as far as mental illness, autism, allergies, autoimmune issues, all different kinds of illnesses, then we are functioning better as families, as communities, and as a society.
So we would love for everyone to try this product. It's on our website at momsacrossamerica.org. It is a fundraiser for us. You do support Moms Across America and our programs as well, which are to support you. So by supporting yourself, you're supporting the entire country as well. And we do have a global reach as well, which we're very excited about. So we're thrilled to have you on today, Dr. Bush, and thank you to your entire team at Restore. I know you have an extensive team of knowledgeable and committed doctors and scientists, and thank you to your wife and to everyone who is making a difference through the actions that you're taking and speaking out. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for everything you guys do for the community and education at large. So keep up the great work.
Okay, great. Thank you. Take
Take
care.
care.